So today I will talk with Cathal Jack. Hello, my name is Wagner Barbosa. If you don't know me, I will drop my CV or some information about me in the description below. I'm a voice teacher, vocal coach, voice producer, so I record people also. But here I am your host in this show where I'm going to interview and talk to people around the universe of teaching voice, vocal coaching, especially for singing teachers. Let's go for it. So if you don't know yet what is Modern Vocal Training or MVT, Modern Vocal Training is a globally recognized certification program preparing vocal coaches for success in today's music industry. Since 2018, MVT has certified nearly 500 coaches across 5 continents with rapid ongoing growth. So if you're considering to be a vocal coach or to have the certification, check the link in the description below or just go for modernvocaltraining.com. You will find all the information there. Hope to see you there. Cathal Jack, great friend of mine and yet fantastic teacher with more than 15 years of experience on vocal coaching, voice training. He's a performing artist with a great career in Ireland. He is also a bass player and fantastic person. You'll see, you'll feel it. And so we discussed how a person that wanted to be an astronaut became a brilliant musician and a really successful singing teacher. We discussed about how efficient is or needs to be a technique for a touring performer, as he was and still is. Not that much, but still performing. We discussed about the empathy of a singing teacher, of a vocal coach when dealing with other voices. We discussed on how the meeting with Andres changed his life. It's a very personal and emotional story. It's really inspiring. And Cathal also gives us a kind of fantastic fundamental class about communication, about being responsive, about being a very good communicator when dealing with other artists, and how he became a successful teacher in his own terms, teaching the way he likes and working the way he prefers with the artists or singers that he wanted to work with. So let's go for the show. I hope that you enjoy. Remember to subscribe and remember to put your comments down below. It always helps. If you're listening on YouTube, for sure you can comment. If you're listening on Spotify or other podcast platform, then go for modernvocaltraining.com or go to our channel on YouTube if you want to drop a comment for us to read. Really nice to have you in the show. And for sure, I just want you to start introducing yourself and telling all the people that are checking the show something about your story. You know, I know you're a singer. We're friends, so I know you. I know you're a singer, bassist, and then coach. It was being a teacher first, later how it started.
How did it start? We'll get to how it's going maybe in a while.
Yeah.
I grew up in a musical family, so to be involved in music and to be a singer was not a stretch at all. I never played an instrument until I picked up bass guitar when I was 14. But I think that from the amount of times that I'd heard my dad tuning his guitar, my dad is a singer-songwriter. I think when I was 5 years old, I could have tuned a guitar. Always sang, picked up the bass when I felt like it. Never wanted to be a guitarist, always wanted to be a bass player once I decided that's what I wanted to do. And even though I always sang, even at that stage, I never really thought about putting the two of them together. Singing was one of those things that didn't really occur to me, even though, as I said, I always sang.
Yeah.
And then I discovered when I was about 15 that I could sing, U2 and The Police. And they were also the kind of songs that I loved to play bass to. And after that, I went to university. I didn't study music, but in Ireland, to study at third level is state funded. So So I was in the fortunate position just to be able to choose at third level what I found interesting, which is what I did. But I
Mm-hmm.
also intended to move to a city where I could network as a musician,
Uh-huh.
as a bass player, as a singer, and joined a band as a bass player. And quickly enough, I was, singing a lot of the set. Again, by accident, even though I always knew I was a singer. And Ireland is a country where even if you're playing covers, which is mostly what I did at the time,
Mm-hmm.
you can really make a career out of it and have
Great.
a good job. The
Mm-hmm.
standard of touring cover bands around the country is really high. So I really learned a lot about not just being on stage and performing, but about all aspects of production, about lighting, about sound, and about everything that goes with being on tour. So I would describe it as being on tour. I don't
Yeah.
gig. I'm on tour. Is kind of the language that's developed around that I look at. My brother, who unlike me is a very very good songwriter, and is a well established
Mm-hmm.
artist here in Ireland, started voice training with a guy in the city that we lived in, which is Galway on the west coast.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy's name was Andres Martorell.
Yeah.
So I met Andres, who is one of the founders of MVT, through my brother. And
Yeah. Hold it. I just wanted to ask you something before because it was something that popped up. It was very interesting because it relates to me. Just which is, man, first you're saying about playing and then singing kind of accidentally, right? For me it was something like I started to study guitar, and then my whole thing was about guitar, and then I was singing first of all because to play guitar, to play chords in guitar, it makes no sense if you're not singing the tunes, right? And then it was really hard for me to find anything about voice technique and voice. I didn't know that we could have voice lessons. A little bit like you, but differently than you. Also, I had like YouTube and my kind of top thing, Brazilian stuff, but also, YouTube, ACDC, all the like Zeppelin, and so on and so forth. It was absolutely crazy frustrating for me because I couldn't sing, so I was really trying hard, but I couldn't. And then it's so great for me to see that you just went there and had this kind of easiness on singing those tunes. We come back later to when you clash to Andres and the method. But you would say that because it was easy for you to sing those tunes, or this high, this high with this power and vocal effects and so on and so forth, it made you more difficult to be a teacher or easier to be a teacher?
I think easier
Okay.
because but let me qualify that. For me, I think my ear has always been good,
Mm-hmm.
and I've learned to trust it.
Mm-hmm.
So the leap, because you and I are both performers and we're both singers, but we're
Yeah.
also both voice coaches. The leap from being a good singer, even a good trained singer that understands their voice,
Mm-hmm.
to being a voice coach is getting beyond what you hear in your own voice,
Yeah.
because you have to interpret what you hear in another singer. And for me, I mean, I'm teaching 15 years now. I'm a much better teacher now than I was
Yeah.
15 months and 15 weeks into my career as a voice coach, clearly. But I understood quite quickly that
Mm-hmm.
difference about, this is, if I'm working with a singer, I can't allow my perception of
Mm-hmm.
what my voice does to color what another singer is doing, and my judgment about how I can help them. And what's more, I was quite aware about 3 months into voice training. For me, I was 25 when I started
Mm-hmm.
training my voice. Sorry, I was 23 when I started training my voice.
Okay.
Um, very, very quickly into that, I realized how helpful it was. So I was sold. I remember about 2.5 or 3 months into voice training.
Mm-hmm.
I was singing U2 songs. It was during one of my shows. I can remember it so clearly. And I was singing a note in a song, and it was easier.
Mm-hmm.
It was better. It felt more sustainable. And I was just struck by the fact that I didn't set out to sing it that way. It just happened. And
Yeah.
I realized straight away that that is what this work that I've been doing with this voice coach
Mm-hmm.
is adding up to. And from that point on, I really didn't look back. I still sing the same kind of repertoire that I sang, but
Yeah.
when I started voice training, but I don't know if this makes sense. I suspect it might. I don't think I'd be singing that kind of stuff now if I hadn't trained my voice then.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely, absolutely. Even with this easiness that you have to hit the high notes, as we know already, in the in long term, depend on the usage you do in your voice, you can or you cannot keep singing the same height with the same power, and then that's why it's different for you, I think. Man, and I was asking you about the how easy it was for you or how hard to become a teacher, because for me, I remember, it's not about me, it's about the story. I was in the US once being trained on SLS to be a better coach, already certified, but there training myself. And then I remember one like a very like fantastic coach that we have in the this kind of the gods of voice teaching, telling about other amazing voice coach, saying like it was very hard for him to become a good teacher because it was too easy for him to sing. But you were such a person which is a kind of generous and kind of empathetic person that really can relate or really can take the seat of the other, as you're just mentioning. And for some singers with this so easy voice, let's say, difficult to understand the problem when you have a kind of more hard or more difficult voice to teach. That was the thing I was trying to say. Man, then the meeting with Andres, come back to that, please.
So I met Andres at a very a big moment in my life. One of my best friends had just passed away,
Mm.
and he had a long illness. And the day I was leaving, I'm from an island in the ocean. So when I leave either by plane or by ferry.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got on the ferry to leave after one of my best friend's funerals, I'd had Andres's number on my phone for about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was on the ferry leaving to get back to real life, go back
Mm-hmm.
on tour, I rang Andres. So since then it's nearly become a case of, as one friend had left my life, another huge friend, because Andres and I are very close,
Yeah.
have become very close in the meantime, came into my life, and I had my first session with him. I thought it was bizarre, but I certainly had the feeling that he knew what he was talking about. There was a real, I try and recall that session quite often, which goes back to the conversation that we're
Mm-hmm.
just talking about, in terms of empathy and understanding another person's voice.
Yeah.
I really try and remain in touch with the clumsiness and the strangeness, despite the communication that Andres had.
Yeah.
My experience in that first class, because what sold it to me was that I trusted that he knew what he was on about, and
Yeah.
the things that he explained to me were very coherent and
Mm-hmm.
really turned out to be true. But at that time, I didn't have enough time with them to know that.
Yeah.
I stuck with it,
Mm-hmm.
and over the next 2 or 3 months, it just started to take hold. I told you about that show, I think about
Yeah.
2.5 months later, and it just really clicked. And from that
Mm-hmm.
point, I never really felt like I looked back, and I felt that my level over time went from there. I'm fortunate, and I think philosophically we all as singers can really sound very good if we have a good judgment about
Mm-hmm.
what we can do well. We will always sound good,
Yeah.
and I try and do that as well as I can. But I'm fortunate that the things that I enjoy doing are things that I'm able to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I owe a huge debt, first of all, to my brother for urging me to get in contact with Andres, and then to Andres in not only what he showed me and taught me, but that moment was a course change in my life. I just didn't realize it because,
Yeah.
a year later, Andres was saying that he was bloody busy with his own teaching schedule and was looking for someone else to train up as a voice coach. And I was kind of sick of touring full time at that point.
Yes.
It wasn't part of my plan. I wanted to be an astronaut, but anyway, this wasn't my life plan. But it actually really worked, and I signed up for SLS.
Yeah.
And came into this whole community that I think globally we're a small group. But there's an amazing community of voice coaches all over the world. I remember the first time you and I met.
Yeah.
It was in Poland in 2014.
Yeah.
And since then, since this course changed, it's opened up a whole world.
Yeah.
Of I'm one voice coach in a group that I do what I do, and I do it with my own confidence, and I like what I do, but I also know that there are so many people that do so many other things so well. That's why I've studied with you, because I have had stuff to learn from you.
Yeah. No, we are all, like, as you were saying, like, we are a great community of teachers around the world. This is like amazing. I just remember I get every time I meet you, like, or during the camps, the vocal camps, or for any reason, I'm learning all the time because I really admire you. For me, it's so great to have you here and talk to you. And I told you that it's not in front of camera. I tell you that anytime when I need to do. Man, and then I just want to come back about what you're saying. Two things. When you came to the first lesson with Andres, and then you kept on saying that, the way Andres explained to you stuff, and, it was kind of bizarre, but the things and the order and perhaps the way Andres started to explain things to you clicked. I think as a teacher, as a coach in any area, it is very important, or actually, this is an open question for us to discuss, this feeling that the person in front of you knows what to do, right? Knows how to treat you, how to deal with your voice in our case, but that could be math, that could be, astronomy, whatever. That really kind of puts the pressure on the room a little bit down, don't you think? Like, kind of creates a better atmosphere for the learning process, for the teacher to teach, because there lots of pressure is out just because you know what you're doing. How is that for you?
If I talk, I think the way I can sum this up for me is to talk about the experience that I try and give someone the first time they meet me, which is in the first place, I will say to someone, I will ask them about what it is they want. Why are they here? What has motivated them to want to do this? At the same time, I will explain to them that it's really important to discover what it is that their voice needs, and they can very often, jive together, and sometimes they don't. But both, for me to be helpful to them, I have to understand both. Then it's my job to bring those together.
Yeah.
And I will explain that to them. But something else that I will say to everybody in a first session, and I will remind them, which is, there is no such thing as a stupid question. If anything that I say to them, if it doesn't seem to make sense, if it doesn't agree with their past, they might have had voice training before. If it doesn't agree with their history of voice training, or honestly, if it just seems like BS, just ask. Challenge me, and I want to be, because I know that I don't know everything, but I also have confidence in how I go about things, and I also trust myself, when I don't know something, that I'll try and figure it out. And there are times as voice coaches like that. And there are two other things. There are three. The first is I really try and listen to what someone says, because sometimes I think if I realized I read something really interesting, and it was just a short little article about 6 or 7 years ago that was so influential for me and I realized so much of it was true, that so often when someone else is talking, we're thinking about, rather than listening, we're thinking about what are we going to say
Yeah.
next.
Yeah.
And I try and really actively listen. That's
Hmm.
the first thing. But the other two things are that I will ask them at the end of every session before we finish up. I will very pointedly ask them if they have any questions for me, because I want them to feel that they have that control, because I
Hmm.
don't want them leaving
Yeah.
being vague about things. And the other thing is, and with some people this is no problem, but with others, I feel it's helpful to be really clear. Which is, if I ask them about their interpretation of something, or if I ask them a question about something that's going on,
Hmm.
I don't want them to give me the answer that they think I want.
Yes.
I
Hmm.
want them to give me their answer, and it
Yeah.
doesn't have to make sense.
Yeah.
Apparently, I just want them to be really honest. And with that communication and that back and forth, first of all, I want to be as helpful
Hmm.
as I can be for them, make this time as productive. But also, I want them to understand that we do this together, and that trust
Yeah.
built up over time is really, really important.
Yeah. And man, one thing that comes to my mind after this, beautiful. Actually, again, I'm learning from you now all the time. I'm look at you as a kind of, oh man, it's so great to be your friend. For being that person, actually, especially as a great singer as you were, because what we see often is like frustrated singers that need to do some money and then go for teaching. I'm not judging. I know life is difficult. We need to pay the bills and so on and so forth. But what you're saying is exactly like when you get the seat of a teacher or a coach in front of somebody, it's a coach, is not the singer anymore, right? It's a kind of different persona, and that changes absolutely the scene, because then you're not looking for audience, you're looking for your kind of tool to discover, to develop, to help that voice. Does that resonate to you?
Completely. As a voice coach, I see myself as somewhere between a personal trainer and a personal assistant to a singer's voice.
Yes. Yes. And
And my ego or my history as a singer, well, I don't know why I said ego. My history and experience as a singer can be really useful in the real world.
yeah.
Everything that I try and do, and everything that I talk about, I want it to really relate to the real world of singing.
Yeah.
Um, some singers are really curious to really understand how and why technique works.
Hmm.
Others just don't care. And for the ones that don't care, we just don't go there. We just work.
Yeah.
They're not, most of them aren't here to learn more about the voice. They just want to sing better. Um, and I am always curious as to what they're thinking, and
Yeah.
as to why, because their motivations can change over time.
Hmm.
Always curious as to what they're thinking, because I always want the work we do to reflect where they are with their goals. But also, I said about, someone's wants and needs. Their
Yeah.
needs may not at that moment absolutely, be the same as what their wants are. And if it's important to work on their needs, I must explain that to them. I must communicate why we might
Yeah.
be doing something. If someone wants to belt but they've no chest voice,
Hmm.
I must explain why we're not working on a belt in the first place,
Yeah.
and
Sure.
that perspective on their behalf. But that's my role there.
Yeah.
And you're right, as a, when I am, my side of the piano as a voice coach, I'm not the singer then. They
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
I'll go out on stage later or at the weekend. I'll do my thing then, but that's not when I do it. One benefit that really is helpful about being a singer is, sometimes, or a lot of the time, it's easier just to demonstrate than to explain.
Exactly.
And if as singers we can do that in our role as voice coaches, I think that's helpful.
Hmm. No, absolutely, absolutely. Especially with several singers that learned just like you in the first place, just by copying, right? So it's easier to copy. So when you can properly demonstrate, it will be easier for the singer to catch up or to understand, I think. Uh, Man, this is so. this is so great. You know, we started up to talk about your history and ended up on philosophy because, you know, this is, in my perspective, and as my life goes on, I'm thinking about this kind of like, what is our role in life? You know, it's like, as help, especially here in this seat, talking about teaching people, helping people to sing, and so on and so forth. And this is for me, amazing to discuss and kind of look in several different ways. Kind of, for example, you were saying, yeah, as a singer, then, you know, there on stage, I do my stuff. And then here, I have a different role. I have a different perspective on the voice, and my experience can help the singer that I'm teaching and not get above the singer. So you're kind of, especially you're putting the hierarchy. Is that a word? Hierarchy?
Hierarchy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like side by side, like, you know, shoulder, touching the shoulders and going, walking together. Not you're here, I have the power, and the singer is in kind of
Yeah.
poorer perspective or place.
And
This is beautiful.
it's like being in a band. Know your
Yeah.
role.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a bass player and singer. I'm a bass player. No one wants to hear a bass solo. I love playing bass. I'm passionate about playing bass, but I want to be the most boring bass player in the world. I just want to do my job well.
Yeah.
But then I'll sing. And then the other thing that I love, I love singing backing vocals. When
Yeah.
someone else is singing, I love singing backing vocals.
Yeah.
But know my role, and you know, I'm I'm not I'm not particularly intelligent, but I'm smart enough to know that I'm not as smart as sometimes I think I am. And and I try and keep curiosity about the
Yeah.
things that I do, and I think that motivates me. I sense something similar in you,
Mm-hmm.
and I give, because you and I, you know, we have known each other a while now. I actually, in kind of understanding my own limits, I actually use you as an example with mutual friends, where I say, you know, I'm a voice coach, and so is
Mm-hmm.
Wagner. I'm a musician, even though different style, different instruments.
Mm-hmm.
But so is Wagner. Wagner's a producer and a songwriter, and I'm not.
See. Yeah.
And there are things that Wagner that I learn things and everything from you, but especially when things, you know, the minutia of how singers work,
Mm-hmm.
and the really small details that bring their level from here,
Mm-hmm.
you know, from here to here.
Mm-hmm.
Wagner really understands those things, and that's why I've studied with you in the past. It's to begin to articulate and understand some of those things, because the better you get at something, the harder it is to get even better again.
Yeah. Sure.
And that attention to detail, that humility of, again, not only knowing your place, but being concerned with articulating your place,
Yeah.
is really important and helpful. And again, I describe myself sometimes as a singer's problem solver. The more little, and the better someone gets, the in a way, the problems get smaller and they get harder to spot, but they also get more numerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like this fractal image, you know, in self-improvement, and it just zooms in and you think, oh, I got there. But no, it's starting again and again, and it just
Yes.
repeats.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
like a metaphor for life.
Yeah. And I remember a great teacher of mine on guitar always saying that the metaphor was, oh, do you know Santa Claus? You know, so with this huge bag in the back, right? This is the musician's bag when you're growing your career. Everything is left behind is inside of the bag. So you have to come back and open it up and, you know, start to look again to the details and review and be humble. And it doesn't mean that you're not great, but, you know, you have to look at it again and again, just like you're saying.
Yeah,
So great.
something I've learned in life is that the people who I know in whatever they do, that really do excel at what they do. It's not necessarily that they don't understand how good they are, but they also know that they're not as good as they want to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they always look up to other people. And something else that I find, and this is a more philosophical thing, they tend to be really generous with their time. They tend to be very generous with their knowledge and with their, with their generosity in terms of passing those things on.
Mm-hmm.
And I try. I don't equivocate myself with people like that,
Mm-hmm.
but I try to do the same.
Yeah. Do you agree that the more you teach, the more you learn in the same thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a confidence in developing a confidence in not knowing what to do in a given
Mm-hmm.
moment rather
Mm-hmm.
than panicking. I remember the week when I started working as a voice coach, my first session, my first week I had one student, and my
Mm-hmm.
second week I had nobody. She
Oof.
didn't come back. It was so bad, um, and that's kind of how it goes sometimes. But I think that um, a confidence in not knowing. I find, to kind of talk like a voice coach for a moment. One of my one of my real observations that about 80% of the time, what we study and the
Mm-hmm.
causes and effects and all these things that we
Mm-hmm.
kind of understand or how it should be, that's true. But there's 1 in 5 voices that really don't
Don't work like
behave
that.
conventionally, if you like,
Yeah.
in my experience. And when I was a younger teacher, I used to panic,
Mm-hmm.
but now I'm much calmer, and I just trust myself to work at it, but always to communicate
Yeah.
as well. If someone really has challenges that are challenging me as well, I'm not going to not be upfront with the singer about it. Again, it's the communication side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And if you're walking shoulder by shoulder with the person, there's no problem on telling like, I don't know what to do, so let's try it this way, right? And if you're here, then you're destroying yourself when you're saying I don't know what to do. So that changes absolutely the scenario. Last question: what would you say to a younger teacher or someone that wants to teach voice? Um, something that you find or you found important for you, or that clicked or changed your way of viewing things. What comes to your mind?
Um, there are two things, I think. The first is understand that it's not about you,
Great.
and that the real challenge is getting out of your own voice and how you perceive it, and doing that on behalf of someone else. And that takes humility. It takes practice,
Yeah.
and it takes time. It's all different ways of saying it's hard.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and I love what I do, is be yourself, know yourself, and work in the way that you enjoy.
Yeah.
And while I'll be really honest, I love what I do. I
Yeah.
don't, there are some days where it's the last thing in the world I want to do, but I really love what I do. And a big part of it is that I don't put myself out there as someone that I'm not, and I don't tell myself that I'm someone that I'm not.
Yeah.
I I really love what I do, and a big part of it is that I work the way I like, and I work with singers who understand that this is the kind of person they're working with.
Yeah. Yeah. And sorry, one more question because come, you're teasing my
It's
my brain. Man, and one thing that you're saying like about loving what we do, because I also do love what I do, with all the passion. So, and then teaching voice, especially nowadays, like online, as we're talking now, uh, it was great for me, especially in the pandemics. I know pandemics was very bad, but some good things we could take from it. Which one of those was doing more online, like kind of. I was teaching people in Japan, in the U.S., so many countries, different cultures, and that started to create a different scenario in my mind that the world is not that huge, it's not that big in both ways. One way, the person having lesson with me because some relation or something that the person found on me that could be helpful, also the opposite. Me to start to understand and to look for different cultures. Look, Japanese culture is like really far from my culture. I was started to look at into some songs and seeing like beautiful things that was quite new for me, or Russian music or whatever. Do you find it interesting, like to have this power of from your studio, personal studio, to reach people out there anywhere?
Absolutely. The world is so much smaller now in those
Yeah.
terms, and functionally, in to do business,
Mm-hmm.
because we are in business,
Mm-hmm.
it is so much easier to do all this now.
Yeah.
But also, it philosophically, it reinforces. I think for me, something I'm quite going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. I think I'm quite unusual. I listen to music all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, for as long as I can remember, I'm really bad at learning lyrics, and anyone that's played in a band will tell you that. Because I don't listen to lyrics. I don't ask songs I love. Don't ask me what they're about. I never ever cared. For as young as I can remember, I know words. I know the words to them, and I
Mm-hmm.
have affection for them. I don't know why they were written that way. I don't care. I understand this probably really makes me a minority. What always, always, always excited me about the music that I listened to
Mm-hmm.
wasn't what the voice said, it was how it sounded.
Ah,
And
okay.
that means it's true now. So
Yeah.
if I'm listening to Spear Us or something else in a language that isn't mine,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter. And one of the things that working with different music styles, with different cultures, with different accents, which accents are wonderful, they're great fun, different languages, it
Yeah.
all comes back to how the voice sounds.
Exactly. Exactly.
For me, there is much there. I myself have much less interest in what the words say,
Mm-hmm.
as much as how they sound.
Yeah.
And working, I work with clients in the Middle East, in Asia, in South America, as well as in Europe and in Ireland.
Yeah.
Different languages, different accents, different styles, but universally, we can't hide meaning
Yeah.
from other people that don't understand the words we say. We can't hide meaning in how we say them.
Oh man, I could talk to you like for years, um, as we're doing. Thank you so much. How can people reach you?
My name is Cathal Jack, so if you Google Cathal Jack, I am the only one in the world. Cathaljack. So it's www.cathaljack.com. All my socials are Cathal Jack, and I would love to hear from anybody. It's always a
Yeah.
pleasure.
If you're watching this on YouTube, check the link in the description below. If you're just listening on another podcast platform, then you go for cathaljack.com. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. It was a great time. As
It is
always.
always great to catch up. I can now call you my old friend, I think, at this stage. It is always amazing to catch up. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Obrigado.
bro.